comes on the scene and he finds a kingdom that is really filled with ideas of idolatry. And sure enough, the kingdom just split. And Rehoboam was left with the one half of the kingdom, and then Jeroboam took the other half of the kingdom. Jeroboam took the nation of Israel, and Rehoboam the nation of Judah. And there they are. This kingdom has split. So Rehoboam and Jeroboam now have gone their separate ways. And the nation of Israel has lost the splendor of Solomon's reign. They no longer are a part of the world's superpower status because of the fact that things have changed. And this bothered Rehoboam. He was already living under the shadow of David and Solomon, and he really liked the idea of having this power and this prestige and this prominence in the world. And he wanted reunification, but there would be no reunification. God even warned him that there would be no reunification. Jeroboam certainly didn't want reunification because Jeroboam didn't want to go back to being a secretary in Rehoboam's cabinet. He kind of liked the pomp and the circumstance of being king, the perks and the privileges of royalty. And so Jeroboam was doing his own thing, but there was a problem. There was always the threat of reunification as long as one custom was kept in place. And that custom was this: one time a year, all of the Israelites, wherever they lived, must make a pilgrimage back to Jerusalem. On the 8th day, the 15th day, rather, of the 8th month of every year, the children of Israel from all over the world would gather back and flow back into Jerusalem. This bothered Jeroboam because he knew that every time they walked back into Jerusalem, thoughts of heritage would whirl in their mind. Memories of stories told to them as children and would begin to resurface in their thoughts. And this always threatened to perhaps create a revolution. He didn't want that. So Jeroboam came up with a plan. His plan was that instead of them going back to Jerusalem on the 15th day of the 8th month of every year, that he would build golden calves. He would build one golden calf in Bethel, and he would build one golden calf in Dan. And he would say to the Israelites, "These be the gods that delivered you out of Egypt." And it was so much more convenient. It made sense because it was much closer to them than Jerusalem. So it wasn't as hard as going all the way back to Jerusalem. It was much more convenient just to go halfway to Bethel or halfway to Dan, and they could still get their worship on, and they could still get their praise on, and they wouldn't have to go all the way back to Jerusalem. And I just want to stop here and say, be careful. Be very, very careful of convenient worship. Worship that says you don't have to go all the way. Tells me God wants all of my heart, and wants all of my mind, and wants all of my soul, and wants all of my strength. But no, I've got a better plan. You don't have to go all the way back to Jerusalem. You can just stop right here at Bethel or right here at Dan. And something about that made God so angry. The indignation of the divine began to boil up within him. And he was so angry that he spoke to the mind of a young prophet and said to him, "I have a word for King Jeroboam." And that young prophet from Judah walked to Bethel with this instruction: "Don't turn to the left or to the right. Don't go to anybody's house. I don't want you stopping to have dinner or lunch with anybody. You go directly to King Jeroboam. You wag your prophetic finger in his face and speak to him the word of the Lord. You tell him that God is angry. You let him know that God is not pleased with this recent idolatry that he supplanted into these people of God. You let him know that a king is coming. Yeah, a king is coming. And that the king's name will be Josiah. And Josiah will bring righteousness back to the land. You let him know that when Josiah comes, the idols will come down. That when Josiah arrives, that righteousness will be restored.